Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by La Pop. As always, you can check out La Pop at their Doral location or on Instagram and Twitter. But before we introduce everyone, this is going to be a big series preview for the Marlins as they are going up against the San Diego Padres, who are coming at them in the wild card race. I'm Daniel. We have Noah, Kevin, Eli Sussman. We're going to have Isaac Azout hopping in later in the show from San Diego, from Petco Park, to give a little press box report. And, of course, our guest for tonight, he has history with both of these teams, Mr. Glenn Geffner from View from the Bleachers. Glenn, it is so great to have you on.
It's great to be with you guys again. It's been a while. A lot has happened since the last time we all talked. So This will be fun.
Yeah, I think the last time we had you on was in January. So if you could quickly just take us through from then to now in terms of starting View from the Bleachers, when you thought you might want to scratch that writing muscle again. And was there a certain point in the season where it really clicked that you actually wanted to follow through with this all season long? Because that is what has really blown me away. Not that you're just a strong writer and that you have good stories, but that you've really been on this every single day with great angles and insight. So if you could just walk us through from there to now, how it is that you're still following this team seemingly as closely as you were, of course, for all those years in the broadcast booth.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, Eli. I come from a writing background. I studied journalism in college, and I had written a lot. I haven't written much in recent years. So you use the what was the phrase you used, scratching the muscle or doing something like that, exercising the muscle. It's been fun to exercise the muscle. And when I started it, my intention really was to write 2, maybe 3 times a week. So I started this Substack. You can find it at glengeffner.substack.com. And what happened was I was stunned by the number of people who started subscribing in the early days, in the early weeks. And as time went on, I kind of felt this obligation all of a sudden because people are paying me to write for them, or paying to read what I write for them. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot of Marlins, a lot of other Major League Baseball stuff as well. Writing about the Baltimore Orioles tomorrow, for example. But it's been fun. It's certainly the Marlins having as exciting a season as they've had has made it enjoyable to do, has made, I think, for more interest all the way around. But it has been a lot of fun going at it from a different perspective, writing instead of broadcasting. And most interestingly for me, when it comes to covering the Marlins, let's say, and I wouldn't say that I'm covering the team, not around the team on a daily basis, but I talk to a lot of people and try to stay as in the loop as I possibly can. But what's really interesting to me is being able to cover the team from 30,000 feet rather than being right in the middle of everything, as I was for the last 15 years, has given me a very different perspective. And in many ways, I would say even kind of a healthy perspective where I can step back and look at the big picture. Whereas when you're right in the middle of it every single day, all you're worried about is, who are we playing tonight? Who's the next series against? What does the next road trip look like? What's happening at this moment? And so it's been fun for me to step back and kind of look at it from 30,000 feet. And it's been a fun season to do that with.
Yeah. And from that, again, you meant the Marlins, the Padres, the Red Sox. Marlins are facing the Padres. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization when you worked for them with the Padres? You have any stories, anything from your time up in San Diego?
I have a lot of stories, many wonderful years in San Diego. That was my first job in the big leagues with the Padres. I've been working at AAA Rochester out of college, joined the Padres in 1996, was there through the 2002 season, had a great time for the Padres, went to the World Series in 1998, had the chance to work with and learn from Tony Gwynn, who I've said a million times. I'm sure I've said it with you guys. I learned more baseball talking with Tony Gwynn day in and day out over the final 5 years of his career than from anybody I've ever been around in the game. Trevor Hoffman, Ricky Henderson, Bruce Bochy was our manager. John Morris and Larry Lucchino owned the team at that time. We were campaigning to get the new ballpark built. So 1998, the Padres went to the World Series. Then that November got 60% of the vote on Prop C, which authorized building Petco Park and the surrounding development. You think about getting 60% of the vote on anything these days. It's pretty amazing the Padres were able to do that back in 1998. But being around those teams, those players, in my earliest years in the big league, so many wonderful memories, great relationships. And to this day, anytime I go back to San Diego, I really feel like I'm kind of going back home. My wife and I were engaged when we moved to San Diego, got married at the end of our first year in San Diego. That's where we had our first child. we have so many friends, so many memories back there. So San Diego is always fun, and now they got the great ballpark. I had left for the Red Sox before Petco opened, so I've only worked there as a visitor with the Red Sox and later the Marlins. But a lot of great memories and great times in San Diego, America's finest city, as they call it. Can't beat the weather.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, not this week. No,
That's true. Maybe not yesterday. We
I
had
was
one
gonna say-
rain out. We had one rain out in the years that I was there. And to this day, Larry Lucchino, who was the Padres president then went to the Red Sox, kicks himself about it. And we waited till about 9:30. We could have gotten the game in that night against the Mets, but had the one rain out. And for years, that was the only Padres home rain out, maybe over the course of almost 2 decades.
wow. A question I wanted to ask you, Glenn. I know a lot of people here are probably looking into getting into broadcasting. I graduated with a broadcasting degree. I know Kevin's doing that. We have Grant who's also doing that up in Ohio. Probably the biggest question I wanted to ask you, maybe two separate ones, is just how does someone maybe find their footing in terms of being a broadcaster? And maybe the second one will be, how have you seen maybe broadcast change over the course of your career? From you mentioned the 90s to now, 2023, 20s, and all that, how it's really changed.
Yeah, both great questions. Eli mentioned the Substack that I'm doing these days. I'm also, as some of you guys might know, some of your viewers might know, actually working with young aspiring broadcasters, high school and college students mostly, who want to get into play-by-play. You can go to my website, glengeffner.com, and I do this boot camp program where we work directly on kind of the skills that you need, the fundamentals of broadcast, and hopefully you can go back to high school, go to college, and get your reps and get out of school and get a job. And I've been lucky to have some of my students at Florida Atlantic and even a couple of my boot camp alumni now in the short time I've been doing that, go out and get some jobs, which is really exciting and very rewarding. But it's one of those things, you got to get reps. If you want to get into broadcast, you've got to find a way. And now it's easier than ever to do that because of the internet. You don't need a radio station or a TV network to put you on. You can broadcast from your iPhone, from your laptop. So whether you're in high school or college, whether your school has a program or doesn't have a program, I know a lot of young broadcasters whose schools didn't have programs, who started them themselves, again, with a laptop and a microphone. One young man I know who grew up in South Florida started a program like that at Cornell University. And that program, even though he's been out of school for about a decade now, maybe even more than that, that program is still going strong, the Big Red Sports Network at Cornell. So there are ways to broadcast. You got to get reps, though. It's one of those things you can only learn so much in a classroom. You can learn a lot from me on my boot camp, glengeffner.com, but you can only learn so much. You got to get out. You got to get the reps. And one of the things that we do is my students then do play-by-play. We critique things in a very detailed manner. You learn, you do it again. You learn, you do it again. And that's been a lot of fun doing that. When you talk about the way broadcasting itself has changed, I think when I grew up, I'm 54 years old. So I was 10 years old when ESPN was born in 1979. I grew up really with baseball on the radio more than baseball on TV. And people who are my age or older grew up more so listening to the radio than watching TV. Radio was the thing. And that's why I fell in love with radio. I would fall asleep listening to games on WIOD back in those days. It covered the Yankees games, occasionally have Orioles or Red Sox games when the Yankees weren't playing. But every night I was listening to a ball game growing up. When I got out of school, went to Northwestern and certainly paid attention to the Cubs and White Sox in school. When I got out of school and I was working in Rochester in AAA, I sent cassette tapes back in the old days, 1990, to my friends from school who had kind of spanned out across the country and said, hey, can you record a few innings of your hometown play-by-play guy? Because I couldn't listen on Sirius XM then, or I couldn't listen on my telephone to any game I wanted to like you can today. So, I listened to a lot of people and learned. And really, like I said, the emphasis then was on radio. And now everybody comes up, they want to do TV, and that's where the glamour is, and there's more money in TV. And I understand that. But one of the things I tell the young broadcasters I work with all the time is when you're getting started, you're better off cutting your teeth in radio, learning how to do the description, learning how to paint the picture and give the detail. And then you get on TV where you talk a lot less as a play-by-play broadcaster. It's easier to pull back than to have to do radio when you haven't gotten experience doing that, where painting the picture doesn't come as naturally as it does. But, there are a lot of great broadcasters out there these days. It's fun to watch. It's fun to listen to. I think at the end of the day, the fundamentals of doing games are the same as they ever were. I think one of the changes you've seen maybe over the last couple of decades is the analyst has taken on a much larger role, especially on television. The color analyst tends to be the star of the show more than the play-by-play broadcaster, which is great. And when you have the play-by-play broadcaster and analysts with really good chemistry, it's so much fun to watch or listen to. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the same. The fundamentals on TV and radio are the same. The fundamentals in 2023 are the same as they were back when I was in college in the 1980s. And the people, especially with baseball, who do it well are a lot of fun to watch and to listen to, because it really is such an art and a hard thing to do, especially on radio.
And to go from that, I think great segue now to maybe talk a little bit about what's happening currently with baseball, with the Marlins, with the Padres, in a heated race for the wild card race. Marlins, I believe, one game back, and the Padres 6 games back. But that can either switch either way depending on how this series goes. Again, mentioning big for both teams. Josh Bell coming back to what he was traded to last season in San Diego. Kevin, what is your takeaway coming into the series, or maybe one thing you're looking at between the series between the Fish and the Padres?
Must win. I don't think there's another way to put it. I mean, right now, what's kind of helping you is that you have the tiebreaker over Arizona and Chicago. I don't believe they have it against Cincinnati. I think it's like maybe a game or two like apart from that, but you have the possibility to knock out San Diego out of the playoff race. This week. If you sweep, they're basically out of it. If you take 2 out of 3, they're mathematically almost out of it too. So it's a huge series. You're gonna have to rely on Ryan Weathers tonight, and then you have, I believe it's Luzardo and Sandy going against I believe just not the best pitcher is out there for the Padres. I know tonight it's Blake Snell. That's the best pitcher you're facing.
Tonight, that's Michael Wacha tonight.
Oh, now it's Michael Wacha?
Wacha.
Oh, geez. All right. So
we'll get into that later in the show about the pitching matchups and all that.
Yeah, we will. This is a big series. There's another way to put it.
Yeah, what I'm curious to hear from you, Glenn, is what is your overall thoughts about how the Padres have gotten to this point where they are looking up at not only the Marlins, but the majority of the National League this late into the season, despite the roster that they have and the investment that they made in themselves?
It's crazy. And to Kevin's point, this feels like the Padres' last stand. He said it's must win for the Marlins, and it feels like it is. Every game is, every series is. But for the Padres, maybe because they're 5 games behind Miami, this might be their last stand. They can get buried here. For me, the Padres are the biggest disappointment of baseball this year, more so even than the Mets, more so than the Cardinals. And the reason I say that is because with San Diego, the Padres had a very narrow window. This kind of had to be the year. Snell is a free agent after this year. Josh Hader's a free agent after this year. They got a lot of money tied up, a lot of players for many years to come. But it really felt like this had to be the year for the Padres. You couldn't have gone more all in than they did. And, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was buying the Padres. I've been saying all along, I'm not ready to give up on the Padres yet. I said that as recently as a couple of weeks ago. Now they've lost 10 out of 14 after a pretty good stretch where I think they went 11-6 over 17 games, and they got back within a game of 500. There's just so much talent in that ball club, and yet they can't put it together. And the Dodgers, for all they've been through, are running away with the division again. But when you look at the big picture and you look at what San Diego has done really with the Marlins, you mentioned the Reds, you got the D-backs, the Giants, the Phillies, all these teams fighting for wild card spots. You have 3 teams in this league that I would imagine every one of us would have told you at the start of the year we're going to be in the playoffs this year. The Mets, the Cardinals, and the Padres. And none of them are going to be in the playoffs this year. So that's opened the door for the Marlins and for others. Hopefully they can break down that door and walk through it. But that Padres team with all the talent, and you can nitpick here and there and say, did they have to sign Machado and bring Xander Bogaerts in? Could they have spent that Bogaerts money differently? It's crazy because they pitched pretty well, but that lineup just hasn't hit. Soto's numbers are getting back to where Soto's numbers normally are, and yet they just can't win games. They're, unlike the Marlins, unable to win the close games. They're getting buried in one-run games. I think they're 0-10 in extra innings this year, and they keep packing that ballpark. They've sold out close to 50 home games this year. But for me, they're the biggest disappointment of the game.
I'd like to ask, just follow up on that, just on the flip side now for the Marlins. How do you see them, how they got to this point where they're now still looking up at majority of the teams, but with a lot of teams trailing behind them and in a good spot this late in the season?
They're in the hunt. That's all you can ask for. Late August, they're right there. They've got a shot. I've hammered this point ad nauseum throughout the year. What they've done is they've beaten up on really bad teams. And there's a lot to be said for that, because how many times over the years have we seen the Marlins play down to inferior competition? But they haven't shown they can consistently beat really good teams. I think I had the number in my piece this morning. They're 4-18 against teams that are currently in first place in their division. And there's something like 14 games over against teams that are in fourth or fifth place. They've hammered those teams. And look, there's a lot to be said for that, because there are a lot of teams that don't beat those teams. And so they're right there. The question is now, is the rotation going to hold out long enough? I've been concerned about not adding an impact arm at the deadline. How much more are you going to get out of Yuri? Is Brax Garrett, having blown by his career high innings pitch, going to be able to make it to the finish line? Same with Luzardo. You've seen some cracks from those guys here and there of late. You don't know what you're going to get with Cabrera. I really felt like they needed to bring in an impact starter at the deadline, and they didn't. And so for me, that's the biggest question right now, is their starting pitching going to hold on? Because if it does, they're right there. They got as good a shot as anybody.
We should probably bring in Isaac right now.
Oh,
from the press box in Petco Park for the first time.
Hey, Glenn, long time no see.
What's up, Isaac? Alex?
How's it going?
All right. Hey, if you're in San Diego, you got to go back into the press dining room, and there's a security guy there right by the soda machine. His name is Bill. All right.
Okay.
You got to find Bill and send Bill my best.
Send Bill your
Tell
best.
Bill I specifically told you go see him and say hello.
Will do.
Bill will
Absolutely.
take care of you. All right.
Absolutely.
well, Isaac, you went through Dodger Stadium. You got through a hurricane. You're at Petco Park. You're with Danny Alvarez. Talk to us before we get into maybe everything you're seeing in the stadium. Just tell us a little bit about this whole trip, because this is two beautiful ballparks, really great teams. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, and allegedly an earthquake too, right? But no, with Dodger Stadium, you feel the history the minute you walk in there. Obviously, I think some renovations are overdue, perhaps, especially in the bleachers and left, and especially in the visitors clubhouse. It's one of the smaller visitors clubhouses I've seen in Major League Baseball. And
That's new, though. That clubhouse is new in the last 7-8 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, you walk
you
into
should
this,
see the old one, which is still there.
I can't imagine. And the other thing about that one is that it's a hike to get from the press box to the visitors clubhouse at Dodger Stadium. Oh my goodness, it's amazing there. You have to take at least 16 turns to get to where you're going. It was a little bit of a mission, but very nice ballpark. So much history, so many awards that they have there, sort of to maybe intimidate the visiting media and the visiting players about, hey, we're the Los Angeles and Brooklyn Dodgers. But very cool. And then San Diego, one of the nicer visitors clubhouses I've ever seen. Pretty much as big as Marlins, Lone Depot Park's home clubhouse. So it's just been fantastic. Petco Park, fantastic cafeteria here. Great food options, a little bit better than Dodger Stadium, I must say. But I just had chicken nachos for lunch. It was delicious. And it's been fantastic to call this home for the last 5 hours.
Well, we go from that to a little bit about the baseball. We could maybe talk about the Dodger series maybe later and everything like that. But now, Petco, what are you seeing now with the Marlins? The injury report. What is Skip telling you? And overall, maybe the whole vibe of the Marlins are getting ready to face through against the Padres, who are breathing down their necks.
Yeah. They're one of the teams. They're 6 games back, I believe, that third wild card spot. Only five behind the Marlins. So not exactly pivotal, but they got to win these ball games. They got to win this series at least. And yeah, I guess the main highlight from that injury report is a hip impingement. As Eli mentioned, he initially went on the IL with a hamstring strain, and sort of to see another injury like that is a little bit worrisome. You'd assume that he's not going to be back for a while. And that's about it. Just a bunch of bullpens for Shagwell. Tommy Nance will be at AAA today, so you assume he's on the cusp of returning, and they're going to need him. They need all the right-handed relieving help they can get. But vibes are still high. This team is excited. A lot of media for Skip, obviously, he began his post-playing career with this organization in the front office and coaching. So a lot of familiar faces for Skip, for Coop, for Bell. Am I missing anyone? Weathers, obviously. Things are fun out here.
Yeah, you mentioned Coop. This is pretty quickly after the trade. Now meeting him, his playing time has been sporadic with the Padres. He is mostly coming off the bench for them. I think he's DHing. I don't know. Did he say anything pregame, or did you just get that glancing blow of him walking?
I got the glancing blow of him. We saw him take BP. He did not have a media session for anyone, unfortunately. Maybe later in the series we can get him, but today absolutely not. They went straight into their home clubhouse, and that was it. Only Marlins media sessions today.
Did Skip give a tentative return day for Shagwell or no?
No return day for Shagwa. It's very possible that he and
Friday.
Nance are the 2 September call-ups. It's very possible. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see because they're going to need help, especially if
Don't
things
feel
go
Carter,
south
man.
today with weathers, which they might. They're going to have to use Soriano. They're going to have to use Hoeing. So they're going to need these guys back for sure.
You're killing Carver with that one.
Isaac again playing the Padres. Maybe in your opinion, how have you seen the Padres a little bit this season? Really quickly, again, we're talking with Glenn, mentioning how they were maybe favored to win the division, and now again they're 6 games out of the wild card race, a team that's really fallen down the hill, kind of like the Mets. You're watching this team. How have you maybe preview the Padres for the Marlins coming into the series?
Yeah, they're coming off a very, very tough series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and that just seemed to be like the nail in the coffin for them. It wasn't really a competitive series for them, unfortunately. And like Skip said, and like Glenn was saying, that you can't take them lightly or whatever at all. You have the top 4 guys in their lineup, and no team goes into San Diego excited to face this team. So you got to be careful. You can't take them lightly whatsoever. And I'm as surprised as Glenn is that this has gone this way for this ball club, because you look at the rotation, you look at the lineup, you look at Josh Hader. Where is there a weak spot? I don't see one. So it's just tough, and it just shows you that hey, that's why you play the games.
Yeah. And the pitching matchups, Ryan Weathers coming back. Have you seen him? How is he looking like making his first start back in San Diego? And then maybe also for the Padres, who I believe Blake Snell was supposed to make the start.
Yeah, it'll be Michael Waka for San Diego. Weathers, I made a friendly wager with Christina. I told her that I believe he gets a quality start today. 6 innings, 3 runs or less, 3 earned runs or less.
You lost that bet.
Christina's definitely laughing at you right now.
She is.
She knew what she was doing.
I think he can do it. And so we asked someone, I think it was Christina who asked Skip, who has the advantage that he grew up with that organization? Who has the advantage, the pitcher, the other team? And both sides would have a little bit of an edge there. So it's hard to say. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we see 6 innings of 3 runs or less from Ryan Weathers today. This is the game they win.
That'd be encouraging.
Yeah, they're going to need him. And I think it was Craig that said that.
Craig said, yeah, Washington.
He might earn another start unless things go south. That, hey, he might start again this weekend at Lone Depot Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So anything else you want to mention, Isaac? Doesn't have to be from baseball, your trip, anything at all before we let you go. I know we have a prediction video coming from you. So.
The credential isn't a sticker.
The credential isn't a sticker. They did mess up a little bit, my credential. They didn't have it, so they had to make a crusty one for me. They had to write handwriting, clubhouse, fields, and press box, and I had a little bit of an issue.
It's a nice language.
Isaac Steven?
Yeah, Steven's the middle name. But no, I want to. I'm sure you guys talked about it. I want to hear about Glenn. What have you been up to? I've been reading all your blogs. They've been fantastic.
Thank you. You got to get out. You got to experience Petco, and you got to experience the gas lamp while you're in San Diego. Yes. There is no better combination of a ballpark and an area around the ballpark anywhere in baseball. And we were talking earlier about my time in San Diego, and we campaigned to get Petco Park built and tried to sell people on the vision of what Petco could mean to San Diego. And that's one place. And some might say, well, it hasn't happened everywhere like that, and they'd be accurate in saying that. But San Diego is one place where everything that the Padres said was going to happen has happened times 2, times 3. It's unbelievable. For me, it's the nicest downtown in America, and the ballpark's right in the middle of it. Gay men's, you got restaurants, you got bars, you got everything you want right there. The hotels are all walking distance. It's a lot of people in football say they're going to play the Super Bowl in San Diego every single year. And they're going to need a stadium at this point to get that done. But people love San Diego for big events. So you got to get out and make sure you experience San Diego while you're there, Isaac.
Yeah, I'm going to try. You could see the Marlins Hotel from here, from the press box. It's walking across the street. Yeah. And in Chavez Ravine, I had the opportunity in between ball games with that doubleheader. I had the opportunity to explore, see the sculptures, see the commemorative plate for Giancarlo's monumental blast.
478.
478. They don't. I thought it was interesting. They don't have the picture that it was off of, which I guess they don't want to, throw their own pictures under the bus. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to try and get here early tomorrow since I'm staying close by as well and just explore everything because this place is awesome.
Yeah, walk through the park in the outfield. Go see the Tony Gwynn statue out on right center field there. Go check out the Padres Hall of Fame in left field. There's a lot to see there.
Yeah,
I told him
I'm
before he
gonna-
left about it, Glenn, like, because I grew up there. I lived there for 11 years. So I was at the first game at Petco Park. So, awesome. I told him to go to Croce's in the Gas Lamp. That's a great place. They have Hops Grill, too, if it's still there. That's a great place. Like, you gotta check out San Diego while you're there as much as you can. Downtown's great. It's really fun. And the way that they've built it up since I've lived there has been really impressive. It's only gotten better.
Unbelievable. It's
So,
unbelievable.
Yeah, they got a new library there and everything. Like it's only gotten better there now. Like since I left in 2007, I think I left. So it's only gotten that much better. So it's cool to see.
Not to state the obvious, but it would be great if Miami could sort of take a page out of their book and build around Lone Depot Park and have some restaurants.
Location's a big deal, and hit a grand slam with the location.
Yeah,
right. Well, what I will
you
say,
had the gas lamp there, although it wasn't as big, it didn't extend as far as it does now. The ballpark just made everything grow.
Yeah, what I would say is when it was first built, it was in not a great area. Like that area was not good. It was all old metal buildings. Like they have the Western Metal Supply Company building. It was like all old buildings. They broke them all down. The first couple of years, though, you had to park far away from the stadium because they only have one parking garage. So you had to park on the street, and then you had to walk back in the middle of downtown at 10 o'clock at night. And it was like, ooh. But from what I hear, and from what Isaac will probably tell us, it's only gotten better there. So they've built it up the right way for sure.
Yeah, indeed. I just have memories of Stanton multiple times slamming that Western Metal Supply Company building in the WBC as a Marlin.
Home run derby there.
He was just playing pepper with that brick building over there. ALD, in the 2020 playoffs as well. That's Danny Alvarez is reminding me.
Oh, Glenn.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Glenn.
How we doing? What's up?
Oh, good, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right.
Right.
¿Todo bien?
Todo muy bien.
Miggy's doing good?
Miggy's doing good. The two Miggy's are doing
Two
good
Miggy's,
now.
I meant Big Miggy.
No, doing great.
We saw him a few weeks ago, yeah.
Fantastic. Crazy to think that it's just a month and a couple of weeks remaining of him, but good. So good. So far, so good.
All right. Well, good to see you.
Oh, good to see you. Great.
All
Great.
right. We're going to get back to our show now, though.
I know. Oh, my bad.
That's all right. Should have told him to go say hi to Bill in the press dining room.
Yes.
Bill's great. Don't forget, Isaac. Bill's
Bill
the man.
in the press dining
Bill
room.
runs the place.
He's the one who
security
runs
guy.
So, yes,
He's
sir.
The security guy. He runs
He's
the
there,
place.
Florence, probably.
The whole ballpark. Real tall guy.
Is he their equivalent of Florence?
He is kind of the Florence of San Diego. Yes, that's a great
Wow.
call.
Oh, then I'm sure I'm going to
Please
love
make sure you go see Bill.
100%. I'll be sure to do that.
Good.
All right, Isaac. We're gonna leave it to you. Enjoy the game. Enjoy San Diego, and we'll make sure to keep watching you on your coverage. And we have your prediction video with Danny and a special guest.
And a special video. It's gonna be a very fun one. All right, guys, take it easy.
So before going into the break, I wanted to highlight a couple players for the Padres and just talk about maybe their seasons and just how well maybe some of them are performing and maybe how some are maybe not doing so well. Probably the first one that really comes into mind, you could say probably their best player on both sides of the ball this season, Ha-Seong Kim, not Fernando Tatis, maybe not Juan Soto. I believe Ha-Seong Kim leads the league in defensive WAR and in terms of maybe being their best defensive player in all of baseball, has a 6 WAR. Kevin, I believe he's one of your guys, Ha-Seong Kim, and is it yours or maybe Grant's? Well, he's a guy.
He's a guy.
How have you seen Kim? Because he's just been really great offensively, including Gold Glove plus Platinum Glove even defense.
Yeah, he's been one of the more underrated players in baseball that isn't spoken of, and he's been one of the bright spots on the Padres this season. Obviously, hitting 278, 369, 439, 808, 16 homers. You would think that someone, kind of like Kim, that's not very tall, I believe, just 5'9", 168, doesn't have the power. And he does. I mean, it's one of those pluses that you get in someone like Kim. I believe he's their leadoff hitter. Correct me if I'm wrong for the most part. So it's a huge plus for him. He doesn't strike out too much. He walks a lot, 12% walk rate. Puts the ball in play a pretty good amount. I mean, it's what you need in a player. And obviously, I believe at some point we mentioned him as a trade target internally. Obviously, I don't think he was going anywhere, especially that the Padres looked to add, and they did. Well, kind of. They had, a very old Rich Hill, and I believe it was
And Cooper.
G-Man Choi.
Oh,
G-Man Choi and Cooper.
Yeah, G-Man Choi and Cooper.
Yeah, so and Cooper and Sean Reynolds. Shout out Sean Reynolds. And yeah. So he's a great player. He's been one of the bright spots, as I mentioned, and it's nice to see that. Oh my God, he has a 161 ISO. That's very low. Okay, he's one of the bright spots, nonetheless.
Yeah, his defense as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God, 161.
Yeah, he does everything except, well, he still puts the ball over the wall a decent amount, but he's just a tremendously well-rounded player this year.
He's the best defensive shortstop on the team. They have about 8 shortstops. He doesn't get to play much shortstop, but he really is the best defender they have at that position.
Yeah, it's crazy looking at Hyunsu Kim. His contract, I believe, I'm looking at it now, 4 years, $28 million, and getting that level of production. And then you go to maybe Xander Bogaerts, who's, I believe, $285, $300 million, and getting him for more than a decade plus. I don't know. It kind of really shows you that those type of contracts, what you're really maybe paying for, and maybe what to really expect when you're paying for that. Glenn, I'd love to hear your opinions on maybe giving these types of contracts to these older players, these decade-long contracts to these players, hoping they could continue that level every single year, maybe compared to like a contract Kim got, which is 28 for 4, which is I'm pretty sure every team would love to have that type of contract.
His next contract's going to be better than that one. But you're right. When you sign somebody to a 10-year contract for $300 million, instead of paying him $30 million a year, what you're really doing is paying him $60 million a year for the first 5 years and hoping that you get 5 great years out of him. And then after that, you're just kind of biting the bullet. And that's a tough way to live financially. They've got so many guys they're doing that with now. And they've got a decision to make in the next year on Juan Soto. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. But they've got Machado with the huge money and Bogaerts the huge money, Tatis with the huge money. They got pitchers making a ton of money. The Bogaerts thing, I mentioned this earlier, it just seemed like a little more than what they really needed, especially when you got Kim who could play shortstop. When you've now given Machado this massive extension, they've got so many long-term commitments. And how many of those contracts historically, I've actually been working on a piece about this. You look at the huge $150, $200 million, $300 million contracts. How many of those over the life of the contract have been good deals for everybody? And there aren't that many of them. You can go back to Manny Ramirez, 8 years, 160 with the Red Sox many years ago. That worked out great for everybody. The Max Scherzer deal with the Nationals worked out great for everybody. There aren't a lot of those, though. And I think Bogaerts, not off to a great start in the years where you're expecting huge numbers from him. That's a tough one. And the Padres are in a really tough position moving forward now.
Yeah, and just looking, the way the roster is constructed, it just seems like every player in that infield could be their shortstop at any point. But now with Kim locking it down, everyone else has to play different positions. With Tatis manning the outfield, you have Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, and even you look at someone, not talking about the infield, but Gary Sanchez and how well he's performing this season, coming almost out of the blue, cut by the Mets, was in and out of baseball. Just maybe he was going to go overseas or get a really small minor league deal and opting out there. Just Kevin, with Gary Sanchez, this is a guy who no one thought was going to perform like this at all this season. Cut by the Mets, was maybe a little bit of a laughing stock for baseball just for a bit, has come out 16 home runs, has over a 2 WAR, and has really gelled with Blake Snell. When those two guys are together, it seems like they're creating really great baseball.
Yeah, you said it. When you look at it, it's been mostly power for Sanchez. Still not hitting much for contact, doesn't put the ball in place, striking out at a 25% rate. And obviously, I guess the defense with Blake Snell has been great. It's one of those nice. I guess it's another one of those positives for the Padres this year. They were able to snag a guy on a minor league deal, I believe it was, or a minimum deal, and we're able to get him. And he's been a nice add for this team. He's probably going to get himself another contract with another team, not too big, but he's worked his way back to kind of reestablish his value in a new light.
I know a team that needs a catcher, by the way. I'm not sure he's the answer.
I know one
too. I know a team that needs a catcher.
Yeah, I think I mean, yeah, Kev, you said it. I mean, like you were saying, it's power and nothing else. It literally is power and nothing else. But what I would say, because we were just talking about Petco Park, like you see all these guys with this many home runs, that's impressive because Petco Park historically is not easy to hit there. So crazy to see so many guys with so many home runs on this team. All of these guys, these 6 players on the screen with over 100 WRC plus. They're getting value where they need it. Obviously, as Glenn said, it could be a little better for some of these guys. But, man, this is a team that I'm surprised is in the position that they're in because they have performers. These guys are performing, at least these 6 guys on your screen. But they have –
And they pitch well.
Directly.
They pitch well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy to see that the situation that they're in. I think they should be a lot better than they are. But, yeah, they definitely have performers on this team. I would say one more thing on Sanchez. I don't think it's out of nowhere because he was part of that, like, you know, like system, I guess, kind of rebuild that the Yankees did. He was like one of the main guys that they counted on. So it's late. They're getting production late, the Padres, and yes, it came through the Mets, like you said. But it's cool to see him performing because the potential was always there, but needs to do a bit more than just hit home runs, is what I would say, and play good defense. But yeah, no real bat to ball, but he's a catcher, so he can get away with it. So it's cool to see him performing finally.
So with that, Eli, do you want to go to a quick break? And then out of that break, we'll have our flipped fish contest. No?
Going into the break and then coming out of the break to get the answer. But let me see. I think Isaac is checking it right in time because this is his baby. It is where I'll just hand it to you, Isaac, to explain the premise of this.
Yeah, well, Glenn, I don't know if you've been following, but yes, I think I started this maybe a couple of weeks ago. Coming off the Immaculate Grid, before the Marlins started series, I asked all the fans to give us their either most favorite or most obscure player that played for both franchises. Obviously, Marlins started with the Padres today, so I put on Twitter, give me a Marlin and a Padre, and all the fans can comment. And in this edition, I give Eli a very obscure name, and the first person to comment it correctly in the comments wins a follow from me, I guess. We're working on a better prize, but
what an honor.
It's very difficult to find because our fans are very bright. I'm sure you know that, Glenn. So they get the answer very quickly, and it's very frustrating. But here it is. Here's a player, and go ahead and try and guess it.
Yeah. So it's parts of 8 major league seasons. Overall, kind of underwhelming numbers for a corner outfielder, but it's still a relatively young guy in this day and age, even though he's long since hung up his cleats. Bad from the left side. Through right, 6'3", and that's all we're gonna give the people for now. So we're gonna go to the break, come back out of it, and see if Glenn or if anybody in the comments was able to get it right. So stick with us for the big reveal on the other side.
Any guesses, Glenn?
I got it. I think I got it.
Oh, no. Who is it?
I think I got it. I'm going to go Jeremy Hermida.
Oh,
Jeremy Hermida.
Who
could forget Hermida? He was going to win a batting title for the Marlins, wasn't he?
He was. Yeah, he was supposed to, man. Yeah, that just did not go well after hitting a grand slam in his first career plate appearance. Things just went as south as they could go for this former top prospect. He was supposed to be what Yelich was for Miami, basically. So that was a player. Congratulations. Then you're our first guest to get it right.
Really? All right.
I believe. Yes.
Somebody, I'll take it behind the scenes. Somebody nicknamed Hermida One Speed because he had one level. He never got up. He never got down. He was just so level. And they waited and waited to see some fire out of Hermida, to see him become the player they thought he was going to be when they took him in the first round. It just never happened. Yeah,
11th overall in the 2002 Major League Draft, a high school pick, which are always, a little bit scary. But yeah, I guess Jeremy Hermida, wow, 65 career home runs. Not bad, not horrible, but not what you want with the 11th overall selection.
All right. With that, well, thank you, Isaac. We can look forward to this every single week. Next one will be the Nationals, and
National-
that one.
I have an obscure one. If anyone gets it,
Yeah.
I will be so impressed. There's no
I'm
way
coming back
no
for
one will
that. I'm coming
Oh,
back.
Just comment it on my
Fair-worthy
tweet,
one.
and if you get it, I'll tell you. I'll DM you saying you got it. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Isaac. Now we can go into this little preview between the Marlins and the Padres and talk about this series. We can go into lineups and everything, what to expect. I think now is a great time to go into lineups and really what to expect from both sides, from the Marlins and the Padres. And looking at this, usually in every single one, there's usually so many red lines compared to the Marlins. But at this one, it does look like the Marlins do have the edge in some categories compared to the Padres. And I want to hear from Noah. We have not heard from Noah this entire stream, which is absolutely shocking. Noah, talk to us a little bit, maybe about the Marlins. You seeing Brian De La Cruz hitting right in the middle of the lineup. I'm sure you were a fan of Brian De La Cruz hitting leadoff, but how have you seen maybe DOC perform really as of late? Because that is your guy.
I think he's better suited to be down further in the lineup. He's not a top of the lineup guy. The fact that you pick up Josh Bell and Jake Berge, you extend the lineup. You can push a guy like De La Cruz down to where he should be, which is the 6 or 7 spot. By the way, I was trying to get your attention in the private chat, so I have been here and paying attention. But it's just I like seeing a lot of red on these Savant pages. Okay, Arias has a low hard hit, but like we like what he does. And with a guy with Brian De La Cruz and Jesus Sanchez hitting 6 and 7, that's a deep lineup. You have Soler and Arias at the top, and they cooled off a little bit, but they were mashing before. Arias has started to really hit the ball in the air a lot more, which I don't like seeing because when he hits it on the ground, it seems to find a way to get through. And lately, he seems to have been picking up his launch angle much higher than before. But yeah, it's nice to see a deep lineup.
Can I ask a question of you guys?
Mhm.
I've had this gnawing at me for the last few weeks. What do you guys think about flipping Soler and Arias? With all the success Arias was having leading off. What do you guys think about that?
I think Arias had started to cool off, and so did Soler. And I think it was more of a change of scenery kind of thing. Just try something, see if it works. And it ended up working a little bit. And Soler can still hit leadoff, and you can sometimes have a guy on base for Arias who seems to just drive in everybody. So I think it's better. I would kind of like to see Arias maybe go to third in the lineup, maybe just to give it more chance of having guys on base for him. But I like the idea of if something's not working, change it up, see what works.
Nah, third. He can't be third. The first or second for Arias is correct. He shouldn't be third. Third is the guy that needs to drive in a lot of runs. Arias gets a lot of base hits.
Bellenberger here now. Now you got a longer lineup with Bellenberger.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Yeah, no, he doesn't belong third. First or second is fine. I think interchangeably is fine, Glenn. Honestly, like Soler or Arias leading off, I'm fine with either one. But yeah, no lower than second for Arias.
Yeah, the way Arias has been playing as of late, we could say a lot. His batting average going down. I believe it's 358, 358, or 356 around there. Way from the lofty expectations maybe people had of him hitting 400 or even getting close to that mark. And even in a down spur, really as of late, still hitting the ball, still getting those singles and everything that really comes with it. Kevin, a little bit about Arias, even in the midst of somewhat of a slump, maybe not really hitting what people expected in terms of getting to 380, 390, or even to 370. What have you seen from Arias maybe on this West Coast road trip? Has he been more the player that you've expected, or is he maybe downturned to maybe off the lofty expectations people really had from going into the second half of the year?
When you look at the West Coast trip thus far, Arias is slashing 182, 250, 273, 523. So he's not been good. He's, as Noah mentioned, that he's just trying to hit the ball more in the air. He's trying to get something going. He's trying to, I don't know, more power. I guess he wants to implement into his game. He just has to do what he's been doing, and I think it'll work. If you even put up a bigger sample size, you look at just the month of August itself: 230, 240, 378, 618. It's not like you would think maybe he's getting on base a little bit, at the least, but it's not even that. It's been a big struggle for him. And I guess we would have to look back at when was the first time this, since I believe it was Cincinnati when they started putting Soler at the leadoff spot. So I'd be interested in seeing what those numbers are with him, since that, which probably aren't too good, but it's a lot of just him trying to put it up in the air. I guess he's trying to do a little too much. Obviously I don't blame him. The offense scored you 2 runs in a double header, in both double, 1 run in each double, and in each game of the double header. You would want to do something, to kind of help your team there, but he just has to go back to what he's used to doing. You have Soler, you have Arise, now you have Josh Bell and Jake Berger. As Glenn mentioned, the depth in the lineup is a lot better. You just have to give, I guess, more. You have to trust your teammates that are right behind you in that lineup. So if Arise could just do what he's doing, gets on base, you feel pretty good where you're at. And obviously, this road trip has not been good for him. Neither has the last month for him.
Yeah, it's not his job to, put balls out of the ballpark. It's his job to get on base, especially in the 1-2 spot. So, like you said, get back to what's working. Maybe stop trying to do a little bit too much in terms of I think his swing looks a little different. I think you guys are right. I think he's trying to get under the ball more. So I think that's where he needs to just go back and revert to what was working before. So I agree with what you said, Kev.
Yeah. And maybe now with Soler on the leadoff, we just got this amazing stat from Isaac, hitting 276, 382, and a 690 slugging out the leadoff spot. I've just been hammering the balls as of late for home runs. Eli, what is your thought on Soler leading off? Is that the perfect spot to have this type of player to lead off an inning to get maybe the starting pitcher out of his comfort zone so early into the game?
Not really. They don't have a perfect quintessential leadoff guy. I think that's the conclusion here. Arise does so much well, but not the base runner you want from that position. Jazz has had plenty of leadoff opportunities the last couple of years, and he just doesn't seem super comfortable in that role. And as somebody that has, in his respect, about as much power as anybody, you'd love to have him in more run production situations because there are so many empty plate appearances from him that he's challenged to get on base. I mean, with Soler, the key to him is he's just incredible against left-handed pitching in particular, and also in clutch situations in particular. So he should be hitting relatively high up in a lineup one way or another. I think they have a deeper lineup than they've had in quite a long time at the moment. They don't have one that I would say perfectly fits the bill for somebody in the leadoff spot one way or another. But yeah, I just want to take an opportunity to shout out Jake Berger once again. And even though they acquired him, focusing so much on the power aspect of it, and yet he's been so much more of a complete hitter in his limited time since the trade than even I was anticipating. The fact that his strikeout rate is about half of what it was with the White Sox since he come over. And it's not just statistically, it's also intangibly, the way that he speaks about how he's enjoying being with this team so much more than he was with the White Sox. That has continued to age remarkably well in a very quick time, that particular deal to bring Berger in here. And he, even though he's not batting quite as high up as guys, not a perfect player, he has that has at a position of extreme weakness for this team most of the year at third base. That has been already a very valuable acquisition here that will continue as long as he keeps going in that aspect. That's really to me, that is the biggest change here from where they were in July and prior to that, is simply having Jake Berger there.
Yeah, and not just Jake Berger, Josh Bell has also been just as strong the baseball. I believe he's averaging a 350 batting average so far since becoming a Marlin. I believe 6 or 7 home runs, which is just already more than half of what he had with the Guardians early this season. Glenn, I wanted to ask you, we mentioned Jake Berger with Josh Bell. How have you maybe seen him perform since coming to the Marlins? Because this is what they have hoped for and more. Again, he has an opt-out at the end of the season. Let's see how that maybe plays into the factor in the way he's playing. But with Bell, how have you seen him maybe mesh with the Marlins? Because he's just been a completely different player. He's been the player that what he was with the Nationals, being an all-star, silver slugger, and all that when he was a part of that Soto trade. Just how have you seen him now with the Marlins just transforming into the player he once was?
And had some really good years in Pittsburgh also with the
Yes.
Pirates. He's a guy I've always liked. A switch hitter with power, tends to put the bat on the ball and makes things happen. You mentioned the opt-out. It's really interesting because I think he's owed $16.5 million if he opts in for next year. And the assumption with the way he was struggling when he came here was he was definitely going to be a guy who would not opt out of his contract. Now, all of a sudden, the success he's having, if he carries that out for another 6 weeks and gets to the finish line, all of a sudden he's got a more interesting decision to make there. So his success, might impact whether or not he's on this team next year. The more success he has, maybe makes it less likely he would come back and not opt out of the contract and try for more. We'll see. Obviously, he seems to be enjoying his time here. He was in a rough spot in Cleveland where it's not been a good year for that club. It's a terrible lineup in Cleveland. Somebody mentioned Berger, happy to be out of Chicago, which is a train wreck of a year for the White Sox this year. I even saw a report today that they're talking about potentially looking at options moving outside of Chicago in 6 years when their lease is up. So it's been a disaster on all fronts with the White Sox this year. But both those guys has been great. And, I'll acknowledge the fact that the day after the deadline, I wrote about the fact that, are the Marlins better today than they were yesterday? Yes. But did they bring in huge impact? I didn't think they had. I like the control you have with Berger. If you can put it all together, Bell had been good a couple of years ago. Could he get back to that form? And he has. So, those two deals, if you're looking at the rest of 2023, certainly it worked out real well for the Marlins.
The other thing I'll point out, Glenn, is that, like you mentioned with the opt-out or opt-in player option, he's a Boris client. I know that's been called out before. Yeah. So not that you want to see Josh Bell start to fail. You don't. You want to see him continue to do well. But like Glenn said, the better that he does, the less likely it's going to be that he's back next year. So that's something to consider. I mean, like I've said this before, too, like this team could look with Soler and Bell, this team could look a lot different. Like, let's say neither one comes back. This team could look a lot different in 2024. So,
but if you could then say Josh Bell hasn't been good in a full calendar year, and obviously teams are going to look at these last couple of weeks and they're going to say, if we bring Josh Bell on our team, but he's going to do this, but you look at the past calendar year, and I think we've mentioned this multiple times before, he has not been good. He's not been a good
He was
ball
terrible
player.
after the trade to San Diego last year.
He was
terrible with the Padres.
Terrible with the Padres, not good with the Guardians, and I mean, obviously coming back to the NL East is a huge plus for him. He, when we spoke to him, obviously he said that it was really a different type of pitch arsenal that he saw in the West Coast compared to the East Coast. So obviously it's been a huge factor for him to, to have that familiarity. Maybe he does want to stay with Miami. It wouldn't hurt. Obviously, it's been great. It would make a lot of sense. The free agent market at first base, I believe, isn't too strong, if I'm correct. So maybe
not a good winner to be looking for bats at all. Really, there are a lot of arms out there, but there won't be a lot of bats. And I know it's not time to talk free agency, but the possibility of Soler being here or not, the possibility of Bell being here or not, and the money they would require to bring them back is significant. And losing those guys makes a big difference if that were to happen.
Yep. Yeah. And Eli, can we get that lineup back? We could talk a little bit about the Padres, and then we can get into predictions. Again, looking at the Padres lineup, a lot of superstars when looking between 2 to 4 with Tatis, Soto, Machado, Xander Bogaerts. And I was just looking at the chat, and they were just talking about how one player here has really underperformed. That's Drake Cronenworth, a guy who I believe was their second shortstop, I believe last season, multiple-time All-Star, was someone that they had really high hopes for with that first base, getting Xander Bogaerts. But Eli, with Jake Cronenworth, just how has he just been performing? What has happened to him to the point where he's just been so low on this lineup, and the guy that has just not been the all-star quality bat and glove that they have really hoped for and needed this entire season?
Well, One piece of his value, though, is very important in previous years was the versatility to play several different infield positions and field them well. And then entering this year, making the very unorthodox choice of moving him to first base. You never know how that affects a player. Having to take what was probably his third best position and trying to focus on playing there every single day. There is the pressure of having a new contract. He just got the extension right before the season started. So he wouldn't be the first player that in the first year of a substantial deal, he is getting into some bad habits. It is telling, though, that they made the deal to acquire Garrett Cooper in the first place. Kind of an understanding that there would be that Cronenworth wasn't necessarily playing at a level to this point in the year where you want to start him every single day, and that there are certain opportunities against specific left-handed pitching, not Ryan Weathers, but tougher lefties, where it's best for them to even give him a couple of days off at times to bring in somebody else. Yeah, the power just hasn't really been there for him much. Not that it was ever a huge part of his game, but to be this deep into the year, only 10 homers, just not hitting the ball quite as authoritatively as he has in the past. Exit velocity down, hard hit rate is down with him. Yeah, just a slightly off year for somebody that you would expect to still be in the prime of their career. You could say that with a lot of guys here. With Tatis, even though he's still a StatCast darling, I just noticed that his OPS had dipped below 800 recently. They've kept waiting for him to become close to the version that we saw before, obviously, the suspension and the injuries, and he hasn't quite gotten back to that level yet. So between Machado having a slightly down year, Bogarts having a down year, I wouldn't single out one individual guy. It really is half of this roster just being significantly worse than you could have realistically hoped for, and that drags down the whole group.
The other thing about Cronenworth is that his luck has gotten consistently worse every year of his career. Like his BABIP goes down every year. So take it into account. I said before, it's not all that. I agree with Eli. Like it's a power hitter that's not hitting for power, right? Pretty much is what it comes down to. Like doesn't hit for power, exit velocity figure down. So that's what you have to see. But
I was gonna say, if you look at the contract Cronenworth signed, I think it was 7 years, $80 million, and it's very backloaded. It's another tough deal for the Padres to live with moving forward, unless he again can become the player he had been before this year.
Yeah, just with everything there with the Padres. Does anyone have anything else to mention they want to talk about? It could be with the Padres, Marlins, pitching, anything or not before we get into predictions.
It's too bad Sean didn't get up for the series because I've told you guys before, like he really wants to pitch against the Marlins. I'll put it politely. He really wants to pitch against the Marlins. So he didn't happen for this series, but I think it'll happen in the future.
I still can't believe they brought him up and didn't use him at all. That's still
why do you think he wants to pitch against the Marlins?
Yeah,
that's exactly why.
Yeah, well, my guy Sean Reynolds has a ERA of 22 at AAA since the trade. He's not been helping his case. It's a very ill-timed slump for him if he was really determined to get back up to the majors.
We're blaming all of that on the PCL, by the way, Eli. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
All right, so Eli, let's get that video.
Let's find it. There it is.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
It's time, as always, for prediction time. This part of the program and giving your series predictions. It could be from either team, Marlins, Padres. It could be 2 games or it could be a sweep. And for your MVP, it could be from either team, hitter or pitcher. And your team that you choose does not have to correlate with your MVP. So you can say Marlins sweep and Juan Soto is your MVP. As we're looking at some of our super subscribers and some of their choices. See a lot of Jake Berger, I see more Ha-Seong Kim than Manny Machado or Fernando Tatis. That's a little shocking there.
No, we have an educated audience. They know who the best player on the Padres is right now.
No Sandy on there, huh?
No Sandy. No Ryan Weathers. I'm shocked since it's going to be a quality start, like Isaac said.
The last minute call.
As we're looking here on leaderboard, yours truly has fallen down to the second spot with Grant, who I believe swept in the Dodgers series. And it's a 1-2-3 between FOF employees, and 4 out of the 5 are our employees after we had a bad start to the season in terms of prediction time. Now coming back to the top. But
as it goes, I think Glenn pointed this out on view from the bleachers, the Marlins are still the worst record in the National League since the All-Star break. And like when the team consistently loses series, the optimistic fans consistently miss out on points because they cling to what they want to see. And yeah, that's the way it goes. Typically.
All right. So Eli, whenever you're ready, we can start off with our leadoff hitter for this prediction.
We need to go to our press box. Well, not a press box. It was the car ride from LA to San Diego.
It was a Pacific Coast Highway prediction.
Hi, Eli. We're here for our series prediction for the 3-game set in San Diego. We're just a couple feet away from Petco. And, well, we start this with ladies first, so Isaac.
Marlins are going to take 2 out of 3, I believe. I think weather's going to do great. And I believe that Jake Berger is going to be MVP.
Claudia.
Marlins take 2 out of 3, and MVP is Luis Arraez.
I think the Marlins take 2 out of 3 too. And my MVP is the former Padre, Josh Bell. So ring the bell where the bell used to ring for Trevor Hoffman, former Marlins. So that's my prediction.
Wow.
How did they make Claudia drive? What's up with that? Anyway, it's a little ridiculous.
No
Whatever.
comment.
They both had their man cards revoked.
Oh my God. All right. Starting off with predictions. Always lead off Mr. Kevin Barral.
I think the Marlins will sweep the Padres, which will remove San Diego out of the playoff picture. And the MVP will be none other than Sandy Alcantara.
Ooh. All right. Mr. Noah Berger in his new setup.
So I did say in the chat that I was going to do Marlins 2 of 3, but I'm going to change it, and I'm going to go Marlins sweep. And I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. And I'm going to go with Jake Berger, even though he spells his name wrong.
All right. Alex Carver. Sean Reynolds can't be MVP.
Yeah, I know, but I am going to say that I'm going to go based off of my confidence in the Marlins starting pitching 2 out of 3 in this series, and Weathers and Luzardo, I have low confidence in both. Good opportunity for the Padres at home to prove they're not all the way out of it. I'm going to go Padres 2 out of 3, and I'll say Tatis gets the MVP.
Ooh, all right.
Which one?
I'll go with myself here. I'm not optimistic like everyone else. I think the Marlins aren't the best team when it comes to playing in the West Coast, and I'm going to go Padres take 2 out of 3. And my MVP, you can't go wrong with Juan Soto. So let's go with Juan Soto as the MVP. Eli.
I am kind of teetering on the edge here, but I will, in the end, pick the Marlins to win the series 2 out of 3. MVP Luis Arraez to snap out of his uncharacteristic slump.
All right. Last and certainly not least, Mr. Glenn Geffner.
All right, I was going to go Marlins 2 out of 3. Now I'm overthinking this. I'm thinking about how poorly they've played at Petco over the years. This is the Padres' last stand. I'm going to go San Diego 2 out of 3. And I think, like Daniel, I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
All right. Great choices here. Some great choices by our super subscribers. So anyone, last call at all, anyone wants to mention? Yes, Kevin.
Although I did say Marlins will take 2, will sweep. Garrett Cooper's hitting a walk-off in this series. He's getting revenge.
I was wondering, is he going to have an Alfaro moment here?
Yeah.
I feel it.
Going to happen, isn't it?
One of the worst moments of my 15 years on the radio with the Marlins, and yet one of the most predictable. I hate to say it, but you just saw it coming.
That one lives in my nightmares.
All right.
Yeah.
You got to root for him now, though, because he's back.
That's why they brought him back.
So I need a Ryan Weathers, Garrett Cooper home run. I think that is probably going to happen. At least a hit. We can keep going on forever, but the game's about to start. Late night game here, so stay tuned. Watch that. Grab your popcorn, your cookies, your milk, whatever you need to watch this game. For everyone here at FOF Live, for Daniel, for Kevin, for Eli, Noah, Alex Carver, for Isaac, all the way in San Diego, and of course, our guest, Mr. Glenn Geffner. This has been FOF Live, presented by LaPop. Thank you. Go for it.